Have you ever wondered when you're out in your garden in end of September what sort of things you can do in the way of propagation? Well, it is a brilliant time for doing lots of splitting, and there's a lot of material that is your spring flowering material, so brunneras and pulmonarias and all those sorts of things that you can lift and split because that's the right sort of time of year. But there's also other perennials that you can be doing, and as we will see with what we do in the way of a tour around the nursery, we will show you what material can be done. I'm Rosie Hardy, this is Rosie Hardy Gardening. Okay, so we are doing all sorts of different propagating at the moment, and you can do exactly the same in your gardens, and it will mean that you get plants for free, which is great. So I'm going to show you things like Achillea. Now, for instance, this is Achillea millefolium and this one is ruby wine. Lovely dark flowers, much bigger on the first flowers. Now, this is a plant which we have already cut back the first flowering stems here, and then the new growth is coming, and some of that new growth has put on secondary flowers at a much shorter height. So these are really good for propagating now. And what you will find is with these is that when you actually lift the plant up, you will see that it has got fabulous little runners. So that means it's going to be really easy to propagate. So all you need to do is find some of these pieces which are just greenery at the top, and then you can cut off with a bit of stem off those, and those will make really good. And if you're very lucky, they come with a bit of root attached. Instantly your cutting is a success. The same if you go around some of these pieces like this. Oh, that one's not very good. Here we go. Here's a nice big one here. So lovely bit of top growth. Then you're going round, you're pulling it slightly off the plant, and hey presto, that again comes with a load of root. So that is great. So you can take those off the plant. You could divide it if you wanted to, but it means that if you're just taking them off the side, you're not having to worry about cutting back, etc. So let's just show you what these look like. I had done a few before, so here we go. You don't need all of this because that won't help the plant. So you just cut off the excess foliage there, just so that it's not going to lose too much moisture out of the leaves. And there we have a nice stem, roots at the bottom on those ones, and exactly the same with these ones that I did earlier. They've got lovely bits of root. This one hasn't quite got so much, but if they haven't got as much, they can go into modules. If they've got a little bit more and you've got some really nice little pots, they can be potted up into that. That will be absolutely fine. Overwintered in a cold frame is enough, because these are going to root enough that they will have enough to keep them sustained through the winter months, as long as you don't get too cold. So in a cold frame, as long as it only goes down to say about -10, these will be absolutely fine. If you're in much colder areas, then they will need to go into a slightly heated greenhouse, but don't overwater them through the winter months. Just put them somewhere where they get light, they can root down. But if you're doing them now here in the UK, these will probably be rooted to the bottom of the pots by the end of October. That means that they are perfectly fine to be put out in a cold frame to overwinter, and that will be absolutely fine. So that is the Achillea. So other things that we can do at this time of the year are also geums. And a lot of the geums which are, say, not having a secondary flush of flower are perfectly good to be able to do. So this is a Geum rivale type. It's a really decent clump in here. For the process of actually lifting it out in your garden, I would always get rid of top growth at the moment. So that is literally just getting rid of any of this excess top of leaf, just so that you can see what you're dealing with at the bottom of the thing. It's not going to do the plant any harm. At the moment, we have got warm soils, so anything that you cut back and divide up at this time of the year is going to be absolutely fine. It's no problem at all. Always remove the bottom bit of root because it doesn't need all of that old root. Now, if you're doing this in the garden, All of this rubbish that you're cutting off can literally just go back in the hole that you're doing, because it's all part of the plant. It's still full of nutrient. It gives organic matter, and it means you don't have to put it into a wheelbarrow and take it to your compost heap. Just put it back in the hole that you have just dug out with the plant. So that is one thing to say. Now you're seeing here it's a lot of congested growth within this plant material. Now if you're doing something in the garden like so, and your plant is really quite large, you should be able to put it into 3 pieces, and then you'd have 3 nice new plants. Because this is out of a container, I'm just going to split it in half, just under half to be honest, and I'll just go down like so. And you doing this in the ground, as I have reiterated with all the plants, that if you're doing this in the garden, please do not lift your plant and put it on your grass and put your spade through, because you will just destroy your grass. So do be aware, just do it in the hole, do it on the border, and then any material that is falling off, just let that all go back into the hole. There is nothing wrong with that. Put one piece, nice big piece, back in the ground. Then you have your other piece here like this, which you can then nicely split up. And this is going to split up quite well. Some of these little pieces will come off really easily individually like so. And you don't need any of this outer leaf, but it has got roots, so that is really good. And then you can just pull apart. If it's a little bit too difficult to pull apart, then you can be a little bit more ruthless. This piece has come with a bit of long. This is no use at all. This is not growing now. You need the growing stuff, which is there with the roots. So that is another little piece. As I say, if it is getting to a point where you can't really do it and it's too small to deal with your spade out in the ground, then just cut through carefully with a pair of secateurs to loosen up the roots. You're not going to do any harm to this stuff, because this is all propagating material, so you're going to have really nice bits and pieces. So you can leave them in clumps like so, and those can be potted on, absolutely no problem, straight into pots. They're big enough. You may get the odd small bit that comes off that needs to go in a module, and that is what you will end up with. So out of one plant here, we have managed to get one big plant to go back in the ground, or 3 if you didn't want to produce lots of little tiny pieces. One bigger piece that will go quite easily into a container, or can go into the ground in another position because it's got plenty of root to be able to go out into the ground. That's those 2. And then we have also been left with some really nice smaller pieces like this. So we've got these which can go into pots, those really nice ones which can go into pots, probably 9cm pots. And then you've got these ones here which are a little bit smaller and have got root and really ought to go into plugs. They've all got a little bit too long growth on the top there, so you could just tidy them up a little bit like that, and then they look a little bit neater and tidier. You can do the same with these. Any dead leaf that is on here, take it off. You don't need it, and it's better for the plant because it's not trying to do anything. And then those are nice and clean. And again, just from the point of view, really from aesthetics, just give them a little bit of a tidy up so all the leaves are the same height. Take off, as I say, all of this dead stuff so that it's out the way, and you've got fresh green material there. So we have, out of that one plant, we have got 2 for going in the ground, we've got 3 to go in pots, and we've got 3 to go in there. I make that to be 8 plants out of that plant. These ones will be rooted down and can be either overwintered outside or in a cold frame. These ones will need to go into plugs or modules, and therefore will be overwintered inside the greenhouse. So that is all of those. If you enjoy propagating, then please take a look at the propagation course, which there will be a link at the bottom of this screen. And that is basically a propagation work course which is right the way through all the things to do with herbaceous perennials, how to take them, when to take them. This is a standalone course, therefore once you have bought it, you keep it for as long as you want to be going back to have a look at it. It does not stop after 4 weeks. You then have that as a resource to go back to and rewind and do whatever you want. Also, we found that it is possible for you to gift it. So with Christmas, Thanksgiving, whatever coming up, birthdays, you can gift it to a friend. Hardy geraniums at this time are a very good plant to propagate. And I've got 2 different forms here. I have got a oxonianum type and a phaeum type. Now they have 2 distinctly different leaf shapes. You have got a much larger, let's put them the way that the plants are on the table, there we go. You have got your oxonianum type here, which is rounded, and you'll always see little dark marks just where it comes in there. That's always quite visible on them, especially in the spring. And then the phaeum is a much bigger, more open, broader leaf. So when you put them together, you can see they are a completely different leaf style, so you can tell which you've got from that. But the other way that you can tell which you've got is the way that they are growing. The oxonianum type are going to grow in a big mat and be really a large clump. The phaeum types will, but they have a little bit more of a rhizome, so a little bit more of a woody stem on the surface of the actual soil. And in your garden now, these are things that you can be lifting and dividing, and it's good because we're in the middle end of September. In the UK, there is still quite a lot of growing season to go. You don't need all of this top growth if you're going to be propagating. So cut off all the stem, all this leaf, including any old flower stem. That's absolutely fine. You don't need any of that. You can clear out any of the dead leaf as well while you're going about it, and then you can see how the plant is actually growing. It's quite congested in there, and this requires lifting and splitting. Now, if you're lifting and splitting in the garden, cut off the leaf because that's the easiest way to see where the plant is. Lift it up and then just drop it back down to where you have put it. Take your spade and cut it into the bits that you want it to be. So if you're wanting to just cut it into half, or you're just wanting to take a corner off it, then do that in the ground in the hole where it was. Do not lift it up and put it like so onto your lawn unless you've got a sheet there, or something like a wooden sheet, because if you're going to do that onto your lawn and you put the spade straight through, you will then put a massive slice into your lawn. So don't do that. Always split in the border. So once we have got this out of its pot like so, and I'll just get rid of any of the top waste that's there. Move that one so that we can see what we're up to. You can see this has got all sorts of growth coming on here, and in actual fact quite often there are these pieces that are knobbly bits which are on a woody stem like so, and if you're wanting to do a little bit of propagation at the same time, these are brilliant because they've already put on roots. So these are sort of equivalent of your cheats cuttings. They're not quite big enough to go straight back in the ground, but they will give you some really good material. I'll tidy that up in a minute. First of all, we're just going to have a look at this plant and see where we're going to cut it. And with this, and even with the ones that you've got in the ground, get rid of excess bottom root from them. It's always a good idea. A little bit of a root prune on herbaceous perennials works brilliantly, so do be aware that that is something that is really good to do. And there we have this lovely plant here, which we can decide what we're going to do. And I think in this case, I'm just going to take a side piece off, and this is what you could do in your own garden, and we will just separate out we will see where the plant goes down, and we will just cut down through there. Now in the garden you'll be doing this probably with a spade. You can do it with a saw if you want to. That's absolutely no problem at all. Tidy up the edges, and now you have a really nice, good sized clump that you can then put back into the garden. So that's the piece for back in the garden. What are you going to do with the other piece that you've got? Well, we've got this bit here. We don't need all of this excess stuff there. That could, at that size, go back in the garden somewhere if you wanted to. But if you wanted to do some propagation, all of these nice little pieces will come off. You don't need all of that old dead leaf base there. You can remove quite a bit until you've got a plant that looks like that. And there you have it with a bit of root. Now this is going to be something that you can pot straight away. There's another little one there. And oh yeah, look, it's just going to break into 3. So there we are. And you could leave, there we go, let's take that one. And then perhaps leave those 2 like that with a good amount of root that can then be potted up and make you another plant. And as I've said before, you don't have to put everything into containers. You can put into a bit of ground that you've got prepared for putting young stock into. So some people call it either a seed bed or a growing on bed, or it's an empty vegetable plot that you aren't going to put anything else in through the winter, and you could just line these out because these, even with this amount of root, are going to be good enough to go and be lined out. But when you get to something as small as this one and this one, say, which have not quite got enough root on them, and what you can do with these is you can just score down the edge of those. Same with this one. This one we can cut like so. This bit is of no use whatsoever, so we'd cut it off, discard that bit. That's not going to do anything. Get rid of too many of these older bits of roots of leaf stem like so. Tidy up, and then you see you've got this brown bit, and what will happen is when you score, you make it have that. That just enables it to put on a bit of scarring tissue. That scarring tissue will turn into beautiful root, and this one's got a little bit of root on there, and we will just leave that one as it is because it is obviously wanting to grow. But again, we would put it into a small pot, so we would be potting up those little ones. These ones could go out in the ground, and it will then be exactly the same process with the phaeum type. But with the phaeum type, you will find that the nodes that you are taking from are much, much larger, and they are something that, let's just get this cut back. There we go, nicely tidied up. All right, with the phaeum types, you will see that the growing points are huge in comparison to the growing points on the oxonianums. And when you take it out of the container, you will see that you've got much bigger nodes here. And it's exactly the same process. Get rid of a bit off the base because a lot of that you're not going to need. It's got excess around here that we don't need. So this is a bit of a, just get rid of old growth, you know, it doesn't need that. I mean, in the ground, yes, that's absolutely fine. And you can compost all of this. It's not going to go to waste. You can, anything that you dig up, you know, when you're digging up in the ground and you get all of this waste that you're cutting off, just throw it back into the hole where the plant came from, because that's all the goodness that the plant has had. So it's not like we're wasting it. We just don't need it on it while we're doing the propagation. Now this plant is starting to go that way a bit. So for this purposes, I would like to take off this bit here, this end, and that way I'll get that bit growing away nicely in future. So it's a matter of finding out where it is. It's somewhere along the lines there, and then we would go in here and we would cut down a little bit more woody when you come to this. So it's a much more, you can see it's a much woodier type of being, and it's much bigger clumps, so you're getting something which is a much larger type of division of this, and you have got lots of really nice roots coming out of there. These will all be potted up. You don't need to go as small as plug trays, they can just be potted up. That plant is ready to go back out in the ground. So that is the type of propagation that you would be doing at this time of the year, and you would get away with doing all of this now, and those plants will go out into the ground and they will grow back. You'll have beautiful foliage in another couple of weeks because it's really warm soil, we're getting moisture, everything is still growing quite nicely. They will then look really good right the way through till probably December here in the UK, and it will look really great. So all of the material that you're cutting off them and dividing out in the ground just goes back in the hole that they're in, plus a little bit of extra added goodies from compost that you're going to put in, and then you've got all of these free plants to go on and do something with. And just remember, when you're out and you've taken your cup of coffee out there, remember where you put your cup. I seem to have lost 2 around the nursery at the moment. Hey ho, I'll find them at some stage. As you can see, there's a lot of basal cuttings happening, and we have got hardy geraniums, we have got geums of all sorts, and we have also got Achillea, and then things like Begonia, and there are a few of the later Dahlia cuttings and 1 or 2 extra cuttings of Penstemon, although it's getting a little bit late in the year from the light levels for Penstemons, but because we are protected and they are inside a tunnel and they get frost free in here, then that is absolutely fine. So we have got basal cuttings of varying hardy geraniums through different types of geum there, and you can see by the shape of the leaf the change from hybrid geums to the more rivale type geums. So let's just take a closer look and see what we actually have got. That one there with the beautiful cut foliage here is Geranium Brookside, so those are looking really good. This is a macrorhizum type with the rounder, hairier leaf. Then we have got a geum here. This one is rhinestrewn, that's a big orange one, and you can see a little bit of muck and dirt sitting on the top of the leaf there. That's actually the carrier for the biological control that has gone on there. Behind that there is some Geum bellbank. Then this one with a slightly more rounded leaf is a rivale type, so this is a Geum rivale, this is album. And then we go on to more of the hybrid geums, so you can see the leaf shape changes slightly. We've got redwings there, we've got Princess Juliana here, then there's another little rivale stuck in here. Some of these are just small numbers, so they are, you know, these are 7, so that's 21 in that. There's 13 in that tray. And going through, these are rivale types as well. And then here we have the young Penstemon cuttings. These are much newer. Behind there, the Achillea cuttings. There are some Scabiosa cuttings down here, and also some Alcalthea cuttings. So that's a Malva. This is the Alcalthea. You've got Scabiosa at the back over there, and a few Leucanthemum superbums. These will all make early spring plants, and our dahlias are done in trays, not very many cuttings per tray, so that they produce a tuber about that size, the size of a 50p piece. What's that, 2 centimetres round, to overwinter as a tuber. And then also the trays at the back there, which look empty and just covered in our bark and covered in our cork, they are our seeds all waiting to germinate. We've had a lot of seed success at the moment. There's a lot of germination. I'll go on to that as well in a minute. A lot of this plant material is going to be put on the ground in the tunnel here So it was all put on the ground to overwinter, like so. And at the far end are the trays of the dahlias, which will overwinter with their tiny little tubers sitting there, and they will be kept frost free. I mentioned begonia, and these are Begonia grandis evansiana, both the pink flowered form and the white flowered form. They are great autumn flowering perennials, and yes, they've got flower buds on them, but it's very difficult to not get flower buds, and we do these from two types of propagation, either from cuttings like this, or we do them from the bulbils that they produce. So that is a lovely full mist unit of mainly hardy geraniums and geums. There are also Achillea Gloria Jean, Laschenheit, all looking really good, and those will root down very nicely and be overwintered in here. They will not be potted up this year. Then we come to the seeds, and as you can see with the seeds, lovely little germinated seeds here, really quite fine, and these are going to be pricked out by the end of this week. So we've pricked them out very, very small. You will see by the trays that are behind further over, you can hardly see the green little pricked out seedlings, but they are all there. People ask us, why do we go from this? Well, the answer is seed germinates really well if it's all together, and the seeds are so fine and so small of these, and we do not want to have 10, 15 in a plug cell. So it's much easier to do it this way and then prick out individually for us. We produce so many different types of plants from seed. So those are the ones which are waiting to be pricked out. These are ones which have had the pricking out done. These are much, much larger. We only keep these as an emergency backup in case something happens to the other crop. Rarely do we need these. These will then be discarded. And here you go. These are how we prick out our young seedlings. These have been pricked out a week now, and you can see they're growing away really wonderfully. The ones which are the most recently pricked out are some like these ones here, the Verbena rigida at the back there. So that Verbena rigida, though every single cell in that Verbena rigida tray has got a little plantlet in it. So they will all be doing really well. And you can see how from being in the seed trays to being pricked out like that, they are looking fantastic. And these are all the ones which have been pricked out probably 2-3 weeks pricked out, and then again once they have fully rooted down on this bench, they don't get misted here, they're just sitting and hand watered, these will then be removed and put down onto they will be dressed with cork around the outside. This is really to stop weed, help with water retention, and to stop molds and everything else growing on the top of the seed trays. So these are all dressed. These will all sit here ready to be potted first thing in the spring 2025. Thank you very much for watching, and please do subscribe to the channel. If you want to watch another video of mine, YouTube thinks this one is perfect for you.